Today we're going to start talking about music of the Baroque period, 1600 to 1750, exemplified by J.S. Bach. Today will be the first of two presentations about the music of Bach. One today dealing with Bach's vocal music, the other coming in sections. Yes, we have sections on Thursday, Friday, and Monday having to do with the instrumental music of J.S. Bach. So we're going to start now with Baroque music and Bach, and a word first about Bach's biography. Bach came from a very long line of musicians. Indeed, 10 generations of Bachs were musicians. Goes back to old Wiet Bach in the 16th century and continues generation after generation into the 19th century. In the area in which Bach was born, this small town of Eisenach, you can see the town's name up there and the date in which he was born, 1685. In this area of Thuringia, the region in which Eisenach sits, the word Bach was eponymous. In other words, a Bach simply meant a musician, just like we have the word Kleenex, for example, or we have the word Xerox that begin to take on the connotations of an entire class. So to be a Bach in that area was to be a musician. Johann Sebastian Bach was simply the most talented of this long-lived clan of musicians. From the age of 9, J.S. Bach was orphaned. Both his parents had died by that time, so he was raised for the most part by his older brother, Johann Christoph Bach, who was a student of our Johann Pachelbel. So there is this connection between the Bachs and Pachelbel. And for the most part, J.S. Bach was self-taught. How did he teach himself music? Well, he copied music. He copied music for two reasons. One, to learn the musical style, and two, to get music. Because you simply couldn't go to a photocopy machine and copy the music of Corelli or the music of Vivaldi. You had to copy it down yourself by hand. You couldn't go to a music store and buy edited editions because for the most part that didn't exist. So much more of it was simply music copied by one musician after the next. So Bach learned his craft by copying, literally, Corelli, and we have run into Corelli, of course. Anybody remember a piece by Corelli that we performed? Frederick? La Folia, excellent. And he copied Vivaldi. What's Vivaldi's most famous composition? Frederick again. The Four Seasons. So he copied that, and he also copied some other concerti grossi of Vivaldi, oftentimes surreptitiously by moonlight when he was supposed to be in bed. Bach's devotion to his profession was legendary. When he was a young man, he sort of went AWOL from his first job and walked from the town of Arnstadt, which you see up there, walked from Arnstadt in the center part of Germany all the way up to the Hanseatic city of Lübeck on the North Sea up there, a distance of about 250 miles in order to be able to sit at the feet of a very famous organist and composer there in Lübeck. And then he walked back. It would be like one of us wanting to learn something from a congressman or something and walking from New Haven to Washington, D.C. and back. In his day, Bach was legendary, not so much as a composer, oddly enough, but as what? What was Bach known for in his day? We touched on this before. Angela? He was an organist, okay? So he was an organist. He was the great virtuoso organist of central northern Germany in this period. Now, we have met an organ piece of Bach before. What was that? Name, Michael? Mitch. Okay, yes. What was that, please? G minor fugue. Can you sing any of it? Could anybody sing any of it? Hey, we got some takers down here, Chris and AJ. Together, a duet. Gentlemen, please. Excellent. Oh, wow. Bravo. Okay. I think that's sort of the key that they sang it in. We'll come back to that idea in just a minute, because I found myself tripping over that fugue subject in another one that I want to talk about this morning as I was trying to think through these. There's another famous piece, organ piece of Bach that we might have heard recently. Do we have the toccata queued up there? It should be track 1. Let's listen to a toccata by Bach, written in Arnstadt early in his career. Whoa, where did that come from? That's, oh, I know, it's in the machine. They were in the bay. We lost the CD this morning, so it's sitting in the machine. How interesting. Sometimes our CD player eats our machine for days on end and then only belatedly spits it back out. So do we have that? Okay, we don't have that cued, I'm sorry. But you probably heard it at the concert the other day. It's a big organ piece in D minor, kind of spooky music that begins every Halloween show. Well, that's more organ music by J.S. Bach. We may be able to resurrect that after a while. We'll find out. And again, a piece that he composed as a young man here in the town of Arnstadt, roughly 1705 or so. So there he is, first job. We won't say fresh out of college because Bach did not go to college, but he went to a very high-standing prep school in the northern part of Germany. Just graduated, has his first job at Arnstadt. Let's take a look at Raoul. Here is the picture of our great man, but let's go on to our first real slide there. And I think everybody see that okay? That's the organ in the church at Arnstadt where Bach worked. The organ is still there. The essential parts of the pipes and all are still there. That's the very organ that Bach played. But they've sort of modernized it over the centuries, and they took out the original console. So Raoul, if we could have the next slide, please. And there is the console. This is kind of the central processing unit, if you will, for Bach's organ. So you can see, does that look like a big organ or a small organ to you by our standards? Kind of on the smallest side. There were bigger ones actually up to the north. But you can see here, some of you did that extra credit project on the organ. 2 keyboards and a pedal board down here to be played obviously with the feet. And what do you suppose these things are working all around it? What would we call those? We're going to pull one of those. A stop, okay? And it brings into play an extra rank of pipes of a particular sound. And we have this expression, oh, I'm going to pull out all the stops. Well, of course, that has to do with organ technology. So this is Bach's, the console, in effect, of Bach's original organ. Bach eventually left Arnstadt and moved on to the larger city of Weimar, where he stayed, as you can see there, from 1708 to 1717. And he functioned as an organist and a court musician there. In 1717, he decided to leave that position in Weimar and move on to another town, Curtin. And the Duke of Weimar, Duke Wilhelm, summarily had Bach thrown in jail. Bach was thrown in jail for a month. Sat in jail, languished in jail. We think he started the Well-Tempered Clavier while in jail. Why did the Duke have Bach thrown in jail? Any ideas? Well, he hadn't obtained a release from the Duke. And this tells us something about the status of musicians in the 18th century. They were little better than indentured servants. No such thing as free agency here, not like baseball players or whatever today. If you wanted to take another position, you had to get your present employer to say, okay, it's all right if you go. Imagine that today. You want to quit your job and move on to a better job. Well, you can't leave until the present boss says you can go. But that was the case, and Bach had violated that modus operandi, and there he languished in jail for a month. Finally, the Duke of Weimar relented, and off Bach and his family went to the town of Curtin. Let's take a look at the next slide, please, the town of Curtin. Again, sort of central Germany. This is an engraving of the mid-17th century, and we can see here the court building of complex plexus where Bach worked there in the center. Now we're going to go to the front of that next slide. As it stands today, it's rather heavily damaged after communist occupation after World War II. Rather not in the best state of repair. You go inside the courtyard there. Next slide, please. Going in, and you can see it's something of a mess because they are fixing up that room, and indeed have fixed up that room up above. Let's have the next slide, please. And here is that room up above, the so-called now crystal room of the palace at Curtin, and this was where Bach performed. And when you go to sections this week, you will watch a wonderful video of a performance of the Bach-Brandenburg Concerto No. 5 performed right in this hall. You'll see those same windows there. This is Bach's music performed in the environment for which Bach had created. In 1723, Bach moved again. He was an aggressive, ambitious person, J.S. Bach. He moved this time to the city of Leipzig. Leipzig, a little bit to the south of Curtin, and he spent the rest of his career in Leipzig. He moved to Leipzig in 1723 for two reasons. And we'll come back to those two reasons. But while I have this slide up here, let's just put this in context a little bit. You can see where Berlin is there. You can see where Lübeck is, where he walked all the way at the top. This is central Germany here. And these towns aren't too far apart. Here's Curtin, here's Leipzig. So 1723, he goes to Leipzig. And he goes there for two reasons. One, next slide. One, because his family will be given, by the standards of the time, rather large quarters here. Actually, by our standards, they were very small, 900 square feet. Bach ultimately had 20 children, and they were living in 900 square feet. Ask yourself, do you know how many square feet are in your parents' apartment or home? A lot more than 900. But this was thought to be big digs back in the 18th century in these cities that were encased by military fortresses. In any event, we can see Bach's working area and living area right here in this building. And I want you to count the number of stories because it will become important later on. 1, 2, 3, and then the roof begins. And I also want you to, it's hard to see on the slide, but there's a group of choir boys walking out here. How do I know they're choir boys? Because they're arranged by height. Ever look at choir boys? That's how they arrange them when they walk in procession. The young kids first, the older ones toward the back. We'll come back to that point in just a minute. Another reason Bach moved to Leipzig was it was a university town, so he could get a free university education for his numerous sons. What about his numerous daughters? Did they get a free education at the university? No, because women did not go to the university in this period. The first woman to receive a degree, a college degree in a Western university, was a woman enrolled in philosophy at the University of Padua in 1676. So it would be unprecedented, really. I mean, there was one precedent.